On today's podcast, we dive deep into each presidential candidate, what their policies mean for homeowners facing foreclosure, and what they mean for the economy. Hey, Foreclosure Fix family, and welcome to another episode of the Foreclosure Fix podcast, where our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. Now, if that mission resonates with you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, or share our content with someone who you know can benefit, or better yet, get them a copy of our latest book called The Foreclosure Fix, 12 Proven Steps to Beat the Bank, Escape Foreclosure, and Turn Your Property into a Profitable Asset. It's sold wherever books are sold, and guess what? I'm your host, DJ Olojo, and I am very, very, very excited about this podcast episode. Actually, I'm not excited just about this one, but I'm also excited about the next 2 podcast episodes because we are talking all things presidential. Yes, I'm talking about the 2 presidential candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. If you are in America right now, you hear or have seen or get lots of presidential campaign material. And we are in that cycle of every 4 years where we elect a new president. And the first thing I'm going to tell you before I go any further, before you cut me off, this podcast is not a political podcast. Our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. But we do talk about politics today and next week because it's important to homeowners facing foreclosure. And I would be derelict in my duty as the chief foreclosure fixer and not bringing you information that is pertinent to your foreclosure situation. In addition to that, we also want to talk about things that are important to the overall real estate environment because real estate is what we all own and its value is very important to our net worth, is very important to our financial futures, and it's very important to understanding what options you have when you're facing foreclosure. And both candidates have provided plans for how they plan to bolster the economy, how they plan to bolster the housing market. And in the next couple podcasts, we are going to go over both those plans. And so the first thing I want to say is I am not political. And I keep on repeating that because I don't want you all to think that I have a dog in the fight. My stance is I want America to win. And I think America can win when we do what's right and when we provide an economy for our citizens that is efficient, effective, and allows everybody to prosper. And by doing that, we also help the entire world because our economy is efficient. So that's my political stance. I am pro-America. That being said, the candidates both have laid out plans to get us there, and we're just going to dive deep into those. So first things first, let me set some ground rules. Ground rule number 1, with the information you receive here, I want you to go vote. Yes. It is so important that you go vote. Our democracy is dependent on people voting. And so I want you to find time in your busy and hectic schedule, even though you may be facing foreclosure, even though you have a lot going on, to go cast your vote. It is so important that your voice is heard and that you don't think that your vote does not matter. Your vote counts, and I need you to go cast it. That also being said, I want you to understand that we are covering both candidates. We're going to talk about former President Donald Trump today and some of his policies. And then next week, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris. And I think you need to really, really understand that you got to come back next week to hear both sides of the argument. So don't just tune in this week and say, oh yeah, my candidate, he has all this good stuff planned. Or tune in next week and say, oh yeah, my candidate, she has all this great stuff planned. I want you to listen to both sides because both of them have some interesting things planned out if they were elected to be president going forward. And I think it's very important that you listen to it and that you understand the options ahead of you. The next thing that I want to highlight is I want to also let you know that we're not just talking about housing. We're talking about how each candidate impacts the economy, housing affordability, and interest rates. So those are the kind of the 3 areas that we're going to be focusing in on as we analyze the candidates. Housing affordability, the economy, and interest rates, right? And you may say, DJ, the president does not have any impact on interest rates. That's true, but their policies do. And so when we look at inflation and we look at that, things like that, the interest rates are impacted because the Fed has a mandate to, both stabilize our economy and boost our economy. And so that being said, it's very important that we look at that as well. The big thing that I want to say to everybody, no matter who your candidate is, no matter who you want to win, whether you have Harris Waltz signs in your front or Trump Vance signs, or you don't even know who the presidential candidates are because you are just that disconnected from politics. So I want to let you know there's some great things going on in our economy. To get two politicians to agree that something is a problem lets you know that it's really a problem. And the good thing is that both candidates agree that our economy and housing is a problem. And it's easier to get, two politicians to fight than it is to get them to agree. And so the fact that both candidates agree that our economy, that housing is a problem, is a sign that we are going in the right direction. Now, both candidates provide plans that are different in getting us to solutions, but both candidates agree. And I think that that's a win for the U.S. consumer. That's a win for the United States of America. And that's a win for you if you're out there facing foreclosure, because people recognize that housing is a problem and housing is so important to our economy and to individuals, homeowners, and things like that. And so that is a huge win. These are policies that people are looking at both at the state level, the federal level. And so that being said, it makes me happy that this is something that's going to be top of mind. As we know, when people are campaigning, they're saying whatever they need to say sometimes in order to get elected. We've all seen politicians who make tons of promises, but who deliver on absolutely nothing. And so it's great to see that both candidates are talking about this issue, because it makes it much more likely that they will be able to deliver on their promise as it pertains to housing, as it pertains to the economy, and as it pertains to changing the way in which homeowners are suffering right now in this country. All right, so let's talk about the role of federal versus local politics. And when I say the role of federal versus local politics, a lot of shine is placed on the presidential election. But there are so many other elections that are down ballot that are so important. And no matter where you are, there are elections that are local to you. Referendums, different laws that are being enacted, different things in your local Senate, different things in your city. And those elections, I would argue, are more important to you than the presidential election. Yes, the president does help set what happens at the federal level. They have executive power and things like that. But at the federal level, even if they are using their executive power, there are kind of some checks and balances. And, you have a Senate, you have a House, and things like that help look at legislation coming through. And so there's more eyes, more decision makers, and things like that. But on the local level, that's where the impact of your vote can really be felt, because you are electing the people who walk and talk in your communities. You're looking at the school boards. You're looking at the mayors, you're looking at city council, you're looking at all these people who impact zoning and housing on the local level. And so I would say that the election coming up is more important for you on the local level than it is on the national level. And if you don't realize that who you select for your school board and how good your school rankings are, or what your millage rate is for your taxes and how much you're paying in taxes every year, if you don't think all that stuff impacts your property value, you're highly mistaken. It is so important that you understand that all those things go into the value of your property. If someone can move into your house and not have to pay for private school, or get a school that's rated very, very high, all those things impact and increase the value of your property and make people want to stay in your community. And that staying power, that sticking power, allows your property value to increase and allows your community to flourish. And so it's very important that you just don't look at what presidential candidates you're going to select for. You need to make sure you look at all the candidates. And what I recommend to you, my big tip of the day, and yes, I'm getting to my bow tie round a little early, is that you go ahead and find your ballot and you print out your ballot. you print out your ballot and you look and review all the different candidates, because when you're in the ballot box trying to select who, and you've never seen somebody's name, you're just going for like, okay, whose name do I like, or what person have I seen their signs while I was driving or walking, or who did my friends tell me that they're voting for. That's not an educated voter. That's just a voter who's just voting on a whim. And I know people do it all the time. In all honesty, when I was younger, I've done it too. I would get to the ballot box and just think about, oh, I want this person as my president. And then I would just see all these other names down ballot. I'm like, oh, I didn't look at this. And maybe if you're Republican, you just vote all Republican, or if you're Democrat, you vote all Democrat. But I'm an independent, and sometimes I vote for Republican candidates, sometimes I vote for Democratic candidates. And so I go back and forth. And so I just don't want to pick one person. I want to pick the person who I think is going to be best for my community, the person who holds my values, the person who is going to help my community flourish. And so please, 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 go ahead and research your ballot. Look at all the different referendums so you can see if you want to vote yay or nay for them, and just make sure you're being an educated voter. It is part of our responsibility as Americans to make sure that we are exercising our right to vote, but also not just exercising it, but being an educated voter. So let's dive into why and who I am talking about first. Let's talk about President Donald Trump and his economic policy. Let's first start talking about his housing policies. I think that everybody knows that former President Donald Trump was an entrepreneur, a real estate executive, and he has a passion for shaking things up. In his former presidency, he did some things that were unheard of, some things that were different than any other politician. And that's because he's not a politician. He was formerly in business. And I think even the way he was elected the first time showed you that his approach to business and politics is different than the mainstream politicians you see out there. And so for Donald Trump, him coming into office again in 2024, if he's elected, or I guess 2025, if he's elected, I think that he's going to bring that same type of energy, that energy of being someone who is different, who goes in and shakes things up. And I think that he will probably shake things up even more the second time around, because he's not planning to run again, because you only get 2 terms as a president of the United States, the way our Constitution is set up as it currently stands. And so I think that he's more liable to shake things up in even more significant and drastic ways. Some of the things that he has proposed on the housing side is around home ownership. He wants to reduce mortgage rates by combating inflation and offering tax incentives for first-time home buyers. And so he's not looking at necessarily just supplying more housing. He's looking at how do you combat mortgage rates and things like that by reducing inflation. He's looking at how do you put more money into people's pockets. So his goal is to reduce inflation. Now, that being said, I want to kind of go back and do a couple things. One, I want to let you know that this information is not stuff that I am just making up in my head or just opining about with each candidate. I've actually gone onto the candidates' websites and picked up this information directly from their websites. And so I don't want you to think that I am biased or that I am trying to hype up one candidate or the other. You all can go to the websites for each candidate, and each of them lay out their plans. And so that's all I did. I went to their websites and I picked up their plans, and I'm just regurgitating them to you. I'm also adding my own context so I can let you know how it affects you if you're facing foreclosure, and how I think it's going to affect the housing market. All right, so going back to President Trump, he wants to promote home ownership. He also wants to look at using federal lands for maybe new construction and increased housing. And so as it pertains to promoting home ownership, his plan is to look at inflation and then looking at, are there ways to spur more housing and new construction? He's also looking at the regulatory side. He wants to cut the red tape on the regulatory side to reduce construction costs and ease housing affordability pressures. And you may say, how is he going to do this? I don't know. And if I cut to the point with both candidates, there are lots of great promises, but is missing some hows, right? How do you do this? How do you do this? And that's the big thing with politicians. They want to tell you what you want to hear, but they don't necessarily always provide the how in which you get there. And so that is the big red flag I see with both presidential candidates. They provide great promises, but they don't really give you a path to get there. And maybe it's not their job right now to give you a path because they don't really even know the path, or because the path is definitely maybe murky, and they don't want to scare you. But at the end of the day, they provide great promises, but they don't necessarily let us know how they're going to get there. They give some glimpses by talking about tax cuts or talking about tariffs or things like that, but they don't necessarily let you know the exact how they're going to do it. And so that is alarming with both candidates. In addition to that, President Donald Trump wants to look at immigration. He has said that he is pretty much going to work on the largest kind of immigration plan that we have ever seen. And he plans to restrict immigration. He wants to make sure that our borders are not just wide open for anybody coming in. And this is a good thing for national security. But as it pertains to housing, where this may cause issues is that we may see construction labor increase significantly, because oftentimes many folks who come into the country are looking for jobs that don't require high levels of education per se. And when I say people who are coming into the country, not those who are coming legally, but those who may be coming illegally are typically taking jobs that are service jobs, construction jobs that you can just kind of get into, and where the pay is variable and sometimes on the lower end than when you think about being like a professor or having numerous degrees, or those people who are doctors or things like that. And so that could impact us as it pertains to the cost of construction labor, the cost of goods. When I think about goods, I'm thinking about food, because oftentimes many folks who are coming into the country do end up working on farms and things like that, things where you see a lot of manual labor. And so all those things could cause inflation to rise, specifically for homeowners and housing. In addition to that, when we look at the economic impacts, we are thinking not just about how housing is impacting us on a national level, but at that local level, at home. Both candidates have outlined plans to improve and keep Social Security. And so if you're someone who is on Social Security, you may be worried about, are my benefits going to be cut? Or if you're somebody who's reaching the age in which you can start drawing on Social Security, you may be worrying about that. Both candidates have outlined plans to bolster and secure Social Security. So that's a plus for me, because I think both candidates are saying that, hey, we want you to have that income. And that's very huge, because Social Security is the primary source of income for many, many Americans across the country. And people expect Social Security to be there for them at their older age. And so they want to make sure that it's there. And so both candidates have outlined plans to do that. That is very great, because again, that additional revenue allows people to be able to pay their bills, allows people to be able to make ends meet. And that's so important. When we look at economic plans, again, Donald Trump's big plan is combating inflation. He wants to combat inflation through tax cut for workers. He wants to look at regulatory reforms, and he wants to basically lower the cost of living. He really wants to look at how inflation is impacting our everyday wallets and our pocketbooks to get us to a point where we have more money and you have more disposable income. And with that disposable income, you're able to invest more, and you're able to hopefully get out of your foreclosure situation. Maybe you can pay down your mortgage faster, so you're not even facing foreclosure and things like that. And so when you think about it from that perspective, he's looking at it at a high level, the inflationary picture. If he can lower inflation or stop inflation and get inflation under control, and then it puts the American consumer in a position where they have more resources and to do more things. The good thing I'll say is that the plan is to help homeowners in numerous ways. And I think that if you can tackle inflation, and that if you can get that under control, it definitely helps put dollars back in the pockets of homeowners. Y'all, that leads me to my bow tie round today. And the bow tie round is where I, DJ Olojo, give you my best advice. The B stands for my best advice for somebody facing foreclosure. The O stands for one thing I'm grateful for. And the W stands for my wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story. The B in bow tie round today is vote. Yes. And it's to go print out your ballot early and review and check your candidates. Make sure that you're being an educated voter and you're not just looking at one candidate or two candidates, but you're looking at your entire ballot, because oftentimes there are things on there that you did not know. And when you get in the ballot box, it's hard to make a great decision when you feel like you're pressed for time and the line is long and you're just ready to be done with the process. So please put out your ballot and go vote and be an educated voter. Number two, the one thing I'm grateful for is our democracy. I'm grateful for the United States of America. It's the land that I love, and I'm just so grateful that we have a country that is a democracy. And people can say bad things about our country, but I still think it's the greatest country on the planet. Our wildest or most interesting foreclosure-related story comes from a loan file that we're dealing with in a judicial state. And basically, I'm the asset manager for this file, and this borrower called in and was basically saying that they received a foreclosure notice, that they didn't get any of the notices that were sent before and things like that. And every time I hear this, I always wonder, are people opening their mail? Like, because for a lender doesn't just wake up and say, I'm going to foreclose on you. They send you document after document after document after document before they go forward. And so I always wonder, like, are people lying to me, or is it a situation where they really didn't get the information that was sent out to them? Regardless, the sad part about this situation is that this person is incurring significant interest and significant legal fees because they did not respond. And so I point this out because I want to remind you all that if you are facing foreclosure and you get documentation, every day you wait is just more money that the lender is spending, and more money that you're going to have to pay. The lender is continuing down the line of foreclosure, and as those legal fees hit and they pay them, they add them to your account. They're called corporate advances or reimbursable advances, and the lender has paid those, and now you have to pay them back. In addition to that, interest is accumulating day in and day out on your loan. So every day that you don't pay, or every day that you don't make a plan, you're paying whatever default interest rate may be on your loan. And so your interest rate may say it's a 6%, but your default interest rate may be at 12 or 13 or 14%. And so you really need to remember that your lack of urgency is causing you financial harm. And so make sure if you get correspondence from your lender and you are delinquent or late, that you communicate and that you find a solution. And that's why we're here to help. And I am excited that this brings us to the end of our podcast. Our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. If that mission resonates with you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, or share our content with someone who you know it can benefit. And make sure you tune in next week to hear all about Vice President Kamala Harris's plan and how it differs from President Donald Trump's plan. As always, I'm DJ Olojo. I love you and God bless you. Talk to you soon. The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.